So today's lesson is about factoring polynomials completely, and what we do, it's called factor by grouping when there's 4 terms. So 4 terms, I should have written this on your notes, we'll write it. 4 terms, we are going to factor by grouping. Okay, so if you have a 4-term polynomial, we can factor by grouping. So what I want to look at, okay, first is we group them into the first 2 and then the second 2. So out of these 2 terms, what can I factor out? What's a monomial that I can take out of both of those? X squared, and that leaves me with x plus 3. Okay, and then these last 2 terms, what can I take out of both of those? A 5, and that leaves me with x plus 3. So what's going to happen every single time is what you should end up with is a matching binomial. So we can see that they have x plus 3, which is matching. And then you should have these 2 outside terms, which are going to make up your second binomial. So let me explain what I mean. So what we're going to do is this first binomial, the one that's matching, okay, becomes our first term, and then our second becomes one made out of the monomials that we factored out. So those would be our 2 answers. Okay, so let's look at number 2. So out of these first 2, y squared and y, I can take out a y, and that leaves me with y plus 1. Then out of these 2, I can take out an x, and that leaves me with y plus 1. So my first factor is going to be this matching binomial, y plus 1, and then my second is going to be these 2 outside terms, y plus x. And those would be my answers. Okay, so let's look at number 3. Okay, the first thing we need to look at on this one is that it's not in descending order. So we're going to rewrite it before we start in descending order. So we should have x to the third minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 6. Okay, we always want to start with it being in descending order. So now what can I take out of these 2? X squared, and then x minus 3. And then what can you factor out of those 2? A 2, and look, matching x minus 3. So my first term is x minus 3, my first factor, not term. And then my second is x squared plus 2, because those were what were on the outside. So let's look at number 4. So on number 4, I'm going to factor by grouping. What can I take out of these 2? A squared. So that leaves me with a plus 3. And then what can I take out of those 2? Really nothing, correct? So it's not like a 0. What is it? It's 1 times a plus 3. So my first polynomial is going to be the one that's matching, a plus 3, and then my second is made up of the outside terms, a squared plus 1. Okay, so let's look at number 5. So my first 2 terms, I have x squared is what I can take out, and that's going to leave me with x plus 4. Okay, so I'm looking at these 2, and I'm like, well, what can I take out if I want this to match? I'm going to take out negative 1, which is going to leave me with x plus 4. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. So my first, I'm going to write it a little different, and you'll see why in just a second, is made up of the matching one. Okay, and then the one made up of these outside terms, x squared minus 1. Okay, here is where I'm going to introduce kind of a new concept. And this is the part called factoring completely. If you look at x squared, minus 1, this is a difference of 2 squares. Okay, x squared minus 1 is a difference of 2 squares, which means I can actually split this one up even further. So x plus 4 is not a difference of 2 squares. It stays the same. And then my rule with difference of 2 squares, that factors into x plus 1, x minus 1, right? Because x times x is x squared, 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, negative x plus x cancels out. So this would be factored completely. Okay, and then let's look at this last one. Okay, and you're like, what the heck is this one doing here? Because it's not even 4 terms. Well, it's not 4 terms, but let's look at it, and then you'll kind of be clued into why it's on this page. So what can you take out of 4, 44, and 96? A 4. And then what can you take out of x to the third, x to the second, and x? 4x, right, is what we can divide all of these by. So that leaves me with x squared minus 11x plus, I should have done this, 24. Okay, so 4x, but then this is a trinomial, so I'm going to set up my 2 parentheses. X times x makes x squared. This is a plus, so 2 of the same, and it's going to be 2 minus signs. And then what can you multiply to make 24 that adds to negative 11? Negative 8 and negative 3. So this would be our answer, right? Not a difference of 2 squares, so we're done. So when you're factoring, make sure that you're checking your binomials to see if they're a difference of 2 squares.